The great challenge in medicine is to strike a balance between compassion and detachment.
It's very difficult to cross to the other side of a street. It's very difficult to know whether one's being brave or being reckless, and when one is being wise or being a coward. It's a bit like Russian roulette with two revolvers, and you've got one revolver called treatment or surgery, and the other revolver which is no treatment. And you have, it's like that for the patient, and you have to decide which to go for.
We both shared a sense of trying to communicate that bigger picture, but also demystifying surgery and placing men and women like Henry in a human context. It's not often that you get to see the other side of it. It's always a patient-led narrative, but this is very much a surgical, a surgeon's viewpoint. And it's not always comfortable, is it, to be in his shoes? But that's what I wanted to try and achieve, to put you in his shoes and to get all of us to understand how difficult it is to do what he does.
Well, it's still, I've been doing this for 15 years, but being faced by this whole corridor of people, most of whom are going to have quite horrendous neurosurgery. Still, I find it very frightening in a way, and quite daunting. Hope, and a lot of it's going to be hope disappointed.
The trouble is, you see, again, the tumours are much bigger because diagnosis is later. I was working in Khartoum in Sudan a few weeks ago, where there's a population of about 40,000 and only 2 or 3 neurosurgeons, 40 million, and very few scanners. So the brain tumours are absolutely enormous. So they're technically beyond anything I'd normally deal with in this country. So you have the double whammy of much more difficult operations with relatively less satisfactory equipment.
А зараз світить?
Ні.
Зараз не світить. No.
So
No
she's
light
not
is
seeing
on.
light.
Yeah.
I think that's the
How
end.
much time we have?
None.
To
It is too late. If they become totally blind, it's too late. You have to operate for raised intracranial pressure
early.
before they completely lose their eyesight. Typical problem here, because diagnosis is so often delayed, and by the time a brain scan is done, the damage is done. Even with benign tumours, people have gone blind or suffered irreversible damage. You get earlier diagnosis if you have more scanners, but even though a brain scan in Ukraine costs $50 to $100, even $50 to $100 for many people here is a huge sum of money, and they can't afford it. And so things get left too late.
A very important part of my outpatient work when I'm in Kiev is telling hordes of patients they don't need an operation. They've had an MRI brain scan showing an abnormality which I know from greater experience is trivial and can be left well alone. And they'll have been scared to death by some provincial Ukrainian surgeon who says you've got to have an operation, this is terribly serious. So I make myself immensely popular with some people by saying, well, actually, you don't need an operation at all.
I provided him with second-hand medical equipment, and in a funny sort of way, all because of people trying to squash it.
The principle of this sort of work is to make yourself dispensable. You have to be a ladder which can then be thrown away by the people who have climbed up you. So if Igor still really needed me, in a sense I'd have failed, and he doesn't really need me now.
It sounds somewhat strange unless you've actually been in that position of being ill, but a lot of people find it very cathartic to talk to the camera. I know that sounds quite strange. I mean, we had a Ukrainian crew in the corridor, so they were able to speak in their own language, of course. But a lot of people do actually find it very cathartic to have a dispassionate but interested third party. As for being in the room and being an observer, I was very strict about not moving around. We had 2 cameras for that very reason. As much as it gives you much better coverage, it also enabled both of us just to be rock still in there. I certainly couldn't move around. I mean, culturally, I wouldn't want to be moving around inside a consultation, even though in the Ukraine, there's loads of people coming in and out of that room. It's a completely different privacy sense, you know. There's people coming in and coffee being delivered and sweets and cakes and all sorts of things go on. The farcical, the surreal, in the middle of these very tragic and in-depth, sensitive conversations.
Посиділи, щоб ніяких не було проблем. Ото тримайте цукерки, роздайте усім людям цукерки, щоб ви тільки тихо сиділи. Добре, я вас просто благаю. Роздайте усім.
People want to help Igor, and they knew this film was a testament to what he and Henry are doing, and therefore everyone was just with us on that. There's no deceit or no conceit about it. Everyone was very aware of what they were doing, including in the end Ulana.
How hard do you pull? That last bit of tumour stuck to a major artery in the brain or something like that. How hard do you pull? Well, to a certain extent, you learn by making mistakes and by previous experience. So you have to advance very, very slowly. But if you never take risks, if you don't occasionally try to discover what you can get away with, you'll never learn. And that's very difficult.
I don't know whether I'll be thinking about anything when I die, but the way I see things at the moment, I'll know that what I will think mattered most was how I tried to help Igor and his patients. And I'll think about Tanya and I'll think about Katya. What are we if we don't try to help others? We're nothing. Nothing at all.